I'm going into debt making this video, and it cost me $2,600 every month to keep pumping out videos at the rate I am. I will pay off this debt using my life savings and trading a bunch of time at work for money. If you click away now, you'll contribute to how long I burn money for. Thanks. So if you've been living under a rock, you probably don't know who Dave Ramsey is, but for those of us in the finance field, we all know him, and he's been around since 1992. I was only 1 year old at that time. He also happens to be one of my mentors, and although he doesn't know me, thanks internet, I really look up to him and I think he's a really smart guy. He provides extremely good information for the general population and for those who have not been able to execute on a plan to basically get out of the rat race. So he talks about paying off debts, saving more than you're actually spending, planning for retirement, making sure you take care of your family, leaving a legacy for your family, and overall just being a good person. His target audience generally does not have a strong financial background, and although they could be high earners, they just really haven't sat down and thought of a way to basically retire at the end of their life. They could be 36-year-old, a lawyer making 6 figures. Even then, that doesn't mean that they are financially literate and they still don't have a plan to retire when they're 65 years old, mainly because they're just burning money. Those who are burning money, could be your kryptonite, mainly because if you have more money available and you're not buying cash flowing assets, it's just going to keep burning out, and basically you're going into the negative when you should be going to the positive if you're planning for retirement. This is his target audience, and he does it in such a way that's so entertaining, it's fun to watch. Because he makes it entertaining, people are more likely to actually learn about financial independence and actually work towards retirement. He's honestly a gift to the world, and we're really lucky to have someone like him who is basically putting out wonderful information like this and lifting up the community. He's on the bigger spectrum of the millionaires. He has a net worth of $200 million. He is providing his knowledge and 62 years of investing experience or life experience by making the show and basically sharing it with the world. But Jeff, you only talked about how amazing Dave Ramsey is. Does that mean you think you're a god? No, and I hope that's obvious. I don't think that. But I do have one contrarian view on his ideas, and that view is that all debt is bad. I got this viewpoint when I first listened to someone who's much smarter than I am, and at the moment I can't quite put a finger on who it was, but basically he said, if I were going to start up a company and I hired a COO, they weren't meeting the metrics and I asked them why, and they said because I didn't take on any debt, he would immediately fire them. And it kind of makes sense because in real estate it's the same way too. You take on low mortgage debt, and basically by holding the asset, you bring in larger cash on cash returns. It's more about managing the debt and making sure that the double-edged sword of debt does not swing back and hit yourself, but instead you're using it to move forward and cut down the prey that you're trying to kill. So Dave thinks debt is bad, but I honestly think it's not always bad. Depending on what type of mortgage or what type of debt you're using and what you're buying with the debt you're taking on and what the rates are, it actually makes sense, because if you're taking on a good chunk of debt at like a 2% rate like they used to be back in 2020, and you use that money to buy another cash flowing property and it's now bringing in a 50% return, I don't think that Dave's thought process of all debt is bad actually makes sense in this case. Sure, there's some risk where if you fail and you don't actually execute on the deal, that you could lose tons of money, but if you're ready for it and you're prepared, you read tons of books, followed mentors, it's gonna be much better for you just to take that step and use that debt and try to slay down some of these really cool deals, take them down. Again, you wanna be limiting your risk, so you don't wanna take on anything that you don't think you could pay back. You can be buying houses that are turnkey, could be making sure that they had recent renovations, doing your inspections. At that point, you've done your analysis already. There's a good chance you're relatively protected from all the downside. Of course, there's always things that can pop up randomly. They're called black swan events, like say you have a really bad earthquake or a fire burns down your house. But in that case too, a lot of times there's actually insurance that will take care of that also. So for this reason, even though Dave says all debt is bad, if you're using it correctly and you're knowledgeable enough and you've practiced and you've read, there's a good chance that it's better to actually use it and take down these really cool deals. You can also use debt to buy really strong cash flowing businesses. So if you follow people like Cody Sanchez, you'll see she talks about taking SBA loans and making sure that you buy things like car washes, laundromats, vending machines, and just things that really basically print money. So if you're using, again, low interest debt to purchase these deals, it's going to be a good idea for you in the long term. And for more information on real estate, personal development, and finance, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and notification bell. So if the sword of debt comes back and cuts you in the neck, it's going to be really bad also. So this is what Dave is trying to basically protect all of his viewers from, and all of his fans, and basically the people who really look up to him. If you have crippling debt and you have really high interest or debt that basically is unmanageable, or basically it's not being offset by anything, so say you're just buying cars and cars and cars, at that point you're burning so much money and it's gonna be quite a burden on you, because it's like you're actively bleeding. It takes a lot of time to make money, and at the end of the day, time is technically energy. If you're bleeding energy, you're gonna have to find a way to make up for it, whether it's through trading in your time for money, or if it's basically taking from another area up your life if you're borrowing from friends or family, which is basically going to make it worse unless you figure out a way to basically increase your shovel. If you have a larger shovel, you can dig yourself out of debt much faster. So say you have a really high paying job, such as a lawyer or a doctor, but because of that debt, you're now basically stuck trading a bunch of time for money. He always says that the borrower is slave to the lender, and that's technically true. The more you owe someone something, the more they expect their money back. This is kind of a responsibility that comes with using debt. So if you're not ready for this, please do not take out a $200,000 loan and decide to go and buy tons of food, tons of gifts for everyone, or just buy a bunch of automobiles that you'll never drive off the lot. Basically use it to show off and impress people that you don't even really care about. And these are some of the dangers of debt. And I really admire Dave for putting this out there because, again, he is like a male lion. He is really a king. He's worth $200 million, at least that's what it says on Wikipedia or Google. He is trying to protect his viewers and from making a mistake that he potentially thinks is the worst thing possible, because he's gone through bankruptcy. He's gone through really hard times when he said it put a strain on his marriage. Again, if it's well managed, there's a good chance that you can make it out of there alive if you're using debt properly, such as buying short-term rentals that make me over $100,000 every single year. And if you want to know how I generate over $100,000 in rental real estate from just one short-term rental, make sure you stay to the end of the video where I explain exactly how I do it. So why I think debt is actually a good thing is because you can basically increase the amount that you're learning. For example, Dave, even though he doesn't really talk about it because it was such a painful time in his life, it's actually beneficial that he did take on some debt and basically had that really poor experience, because doing so, he was able to basically learn from his mistakes and actually share all that information. So if he never actually made the mistake of taking on so much debt, we probably would never have had the gift of Dave Ramsey, because he would have never had that poor experience. So even though he's trying to protect us from it, it's kind of like having a really strong idea parent who doesn't want their child to leave the coop. Basically, they never want the child to experience this really good tool that actually works out for a lot of people too. He is trying to protect you. Again, he is the king of the jungle, and he wants to protect all of his cubs and all the people who look up to him. How I personally use debt myself is I use it to buy, again, cash flow in real estate, where I now produce $13,000 every single month, not minus expenses. So we'll talk about that in another video. But overall, I think debt, again, is not such a bad thing, especially if it's mortgage debt or if it's debt being used to buy cash flow real estate. If my parents never had the option of using debt, they would have never been the point where they are right now, where they are actually retired from real estate. So they initially used money from a bank to buy gas stations, which helps speed up their business. Using that income from the business where they strongly cash flow, they took it and bought a bunch of cash flowing real estate. And nowadays they don't have to work at the gas station anymore. Instead, they're living the dream and basically living off the income that the rental real estate brings in. I do agree with Dave that near the end where you are trying to not work anymore, you should actually pay off all debt, because again, your risk is higher if you have a bunch of debt that's just sitting there and it's not paid off. Because say you have a home and you're no longer actively managing and taking care of your business. So once you're no longer actively invested into the business, pay it all off and basically decrease your chance of having the sword cut you. And what I mean by cut you is, like, say your property management starts to go downhill, you can't find tenants, a bunch of repairs or fixings come up. If you have to add on those expenses onto your PITI, which is your principal, interest, tax, and insurance, and you haven't been saving up the appropriate reserves, it's again going to increase your risk. And if you ever aren't able to make your mortgage payments, the government is going to take your home away, or the bank is going to take your home away. At the end of the day, debt has a real impact on all of our lives. And if you're able to manage it appropriately, it could be a really strong, powerful tool to get you forward. But again, make sure you look at it and you're managing it actively. And once you're ready to step away from actually running your business, put it away and take care of it, and just get rid of all of your debt if you can. Here's a link to that video I promised earlier.